It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings you a special primetime edition of Real Talk, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine for 2020, 2021, and in 2022. Certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, your favorite professor and conservative, ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Uribe. Once again, welcome you here on this, the 10th of April. Of course, thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, in addition to LinkedIn and also on Twitter. Again, folks, I can't thank you enough. Hope you all had a wonderful Easter weekend. As you can see here, I'm rocking my purple from my LA Lakers making the playoffs, and the playoffs come this week. I'm gonna sip a little tea because I want to brag a little. I want to chirp a little bit because my Lakers are going to do some damage in the NBA playoffs. Nobody want to play Lakers, folks. Nobody wants to play my Lakers as the NBA playoffs begin later on this week. And of course, folks, hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Again, enjoying Easter weekend with your families. And of course, I appreciate all you tuning in here on Monday nights here every single week for Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Folks, always remember, check us out on all our great social media. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, and of course, myself. In addition to following Jersey First on both Instagram and Twitter, as well as my own Instagram and Twitter at the Fernando Zone, the same handle. Don't forget to subscribe to Jersey First TV on YouTube. And of course, wherever you get your podcast, specifically on SoundCloud or Spotify, download it and take Jersey First with you, whether you're walking your dog, going to the gym to work up some of those extra pounds from Easter weekend, Easter dinners. Maybe you get in shape for the summer, whatever it is, folks, take Jersey First TV with you. And of course, I cannot say enough about how proud I am to be on the Jersey First team. It's an amazing team, folks, the dream team of journalism here in the Garden State. Of course, new episodes of The Nader Narrative, hosted by Elizabeth Nader, air every Thursday via Jersey First TV. Once again, by going to jerseyfirst.org/TV. And certainly Bridging the Gap with AJ Malilo and Stephen Rombolo. New episodes air on Thursdays as well. And of course, you can check out live episodes every Monday night here on Jersey First TV with Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. And of course, folks, again, sharing is caring. Click that share button. It takes 2 seconds. I'm sure you're scrolling through your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook. Hey, click that share button and make sure that everyone tunes into Jersey First TV tonight here on Facebook Live via streaming and also on YouTube. Folks, you know, it is an election season, and certainly, as you know, I've been interviewing candidates, elected officials on both sides of the aisle during this election season. It's a very, very important one, right? All 120 legislative seats are up for grabs this November, all 80 in the state assembly and all 40 in the state senate. And ultimately, folks, this is the body here in New Jersey that decides really our quality of life, whether or not our taxes keep going up, which they do, how fat the budget keeps increasing, which it does, and everything else. So, you know what, during this election season, it's important to, you know, look at voter engagement and what are the issues that matter most during this election cycle. I think you all know where I stand on this. Pocketbook issues is where it matters to me, and so do a lot of the New Jerseyans. But you know what? There are different demographics that believe in different things. And of course, I like to talk to everybody here in the New Jersey Political Echo Chamber. And this week, folks, it's my pleasure to welcome a double main event here, as I have 2 lovely ladies here joining me tonight. First, she is the president of the LUPE Fund, the Latinas United for Political Empowerment, Iveth Mosquera, and the executive director of the League of Women Voters, Jessie Burns, joins us both here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. Ladies, how are you?
Hi.
Good. Thank you
for having us.
Appreciate your time. Now, again, folks, for everyone tuning at home, and just give you a brief little education about the LUPE Fund. First, it is a 501c3 organization whose mission is to educate, empower, and engage Latinas to promote civic leadership and civic engagement. Now, certainly they offer programs and resources to help increase the number of Latinas in leadership positions, and they also collaborate with other organizations on issues of common interest. More on that later, because I have a little bit to say about that, Iveth, and I know you know I'm going. And certainly, folks, with the League of Women, and by the way, you can check out all of their great resources available, courtesy of the LUPE Fund, by going to LUPE, LUPENJ.org. Make sure you like them on Facebook, and of course, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And as it pertains to the League of Women Voters, folks, you can check out their website, which is lwvnj.org. And certainly you can check all the great resources there. And it was founded in 1919 as an auxiliary to the National American Women's Suffrage Association. And certainly it was designed as a nonpartisan organization dedicated to educating women for their new political role. Again, for all us history buffs, we all know in 1919, the 19th Amendment was ratified, which thus gave women the right to vote in the U.S. Constitution. So really for more than 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been really empowering women during every election cycle about the issues that matter most. So ladies, I hope I did you both justice there for both the organizations. Iveth, let me start with you, because certainly voter engagement is a big topic during this election season. There's no presidential election, there's no gubernatorial election, there's no sort of federal legislative races in both the House and Senate. It's just legislative races here in Trenton. So, what do you? I'll start with you, Iveth, and I'll move on to Jesse. What are both organizations looking to accomplish during this election cycle? Iveth, I'll start with you.
So for us, we just want people to be educated. We want them to have the resources that they need to make an informed vote. And that's why we partner with the League, because the League does a really good job of making sure that all the information is available for voters. And so what we'll do is we want to make that accessible to the Latino community. We want to make sure a lot of Latino people are registered to vote, they're citizens, and they may not know that there are local elections happening. And so we want to just push that information out there, make sure that our Latino community is aware that local elections are very important. And, they affect all of our lives in different ways. So we'll hold webinars with the League, we'll do different outreach events throughout the state with the League to register people to vote. So that's pretty much, our focus.
Now, again, just to be clear, again, as I mentioned, there are legislative races this year, but there are, as you mentioned, local races. County executive, for example, where I live in Hudson County, there's a county executive race. There are freeholder/commissioner races. And of course, I think throughout multiple municipalities in New Jersey, you have city council races vis-a-vis in Hoboken, for example, later on this November. Jesse, again, same question for you. I mean, when you look at the League of Women Voters, you're working with LUPE, the LUPE Fund. Anything specific that you, as the executive director, really want to sort of sink your teeth into during this election cycle?
Yeah, I think that you bring up a good point about what we're up against, right, with state races. Turnout in legislative races where you don't have a gubernatorial or something topping the ticket, you're looking at, I think, off the top of my head, 27%, 34%, really low turnout. So whenever we have a race like this, where it's a legislative race, we really want to focus on ensuring that folks know it's happening, know why it's important, and know their options for voting. So, this year's particularly interesting, I think, because redistricting occurred. Yeah. So not only do you have a kind of a race that a lot of folks aren't planning on participating in, you also have new districts for the first time that are going to be into effect. So when we're approaching voters at the voter registration table, they might be registered, but they might have no idea that their district changed. They might not have no idea about early voting options. They might not know their mail-in ballot options and things like this. So for us, it's really important to make sure that we're doing basic voter education work like that. We have a nonpartisan toolkit that we use that has general graphics about the party affiliation deadline coming up. For example, just a new law. I feel like there's always a change that we're trying to educate folks about, right? A new law just passed that says that if you are an unaffiliated vote by mail voter, you need to declare your party affiliation by April 12th in order to vote by mail, which is new. Previously, they would send unaffiliated voters both ballots and you could pick. And these kind of changes, this is where we focus on making sure that folks know about these things, are educated about these things, and that they're able to exercise their right to vote. So we're pretty laser focused on 2023 elections.
Now, ladies, again, both organizations are nonpartisan, but I think this is where the rubber meets the road here. I think this is where we're going to get into a little bit of a somewhat ideological divide where, yes, they're nonpartisan. You're providing resources for potential new voters, right? New registered voters, voters that have already been registered for a while, maybe are not voting. Certainly, as Jesse, as you mentioned, I mean, turnouts are usually pretty low. especially during legislative races where, again, if there aren't things at the top of the ticket, people aren't very inspired to vote. Again, unless it's a legislative race that really matters to you and it's very competitive. But while the organizations are nonpartisan, I'll sort of, New Jersey continues to be unaffordable, okay? And I'm really the only journalist in New Jersey that's talking about this. I think that other journalists, sort of worry on other things, but it continues to be unaffordable because New Jersey, especially in the legislature, because governors come and go. But the legislature has been a one-party rule for over 20 years. And I don't want to get hyperbolic here, but the truth is that one party has ruled the legislature for over 20 years. So when we think about why New Jersey continues to be unaffordable, it's blaming one party. The minority party has no say whatsoever in New Jersey. It just doesn't work that way. New Jersey, again, the budget continues to escalate every single year. Not just, again, under this Democratic governor. It happened under Republican governors too. So I'm an equal opportunity offender here when it comes to this. But again, it's like the awareness you're trying to bring for voter engagement is for what specifically? Because again, it's not like where I live in Hudson County in the 33rd legislative district. My mayor is my state senator, and he's a pretty much blue collar working class Democrat. It's as blue as Windex here. Okay. But when you move to Central and South Jersey, there's a lot of competitive races. But in Trenton, what we're seeing with the Senate presidency and the Assembly Speaker are far left Democrats that don't understand economics, that spend, that to some extent acquiesce to woke, what I would call woke nonsense and woke policies. And how do you separate that when you're trying to pursue voter engagement? Because again, it's like, what are the issues that both organizations are focusing on when, again, New Jersey's in a fiscal mess because one party has ruled it that way for 20 years legislatively? Iveth, please.
So we don't really think about, who is Republican, who is Democrat. We don't really approach things that way. Okay. The way we approach it is, you're a citizen, you have the right to vote. So we want you to have the information. We never ask, what party are you with or anything like that. And when it comes to the issues, I think across the board, every citizen, every resident, every person across the country is worried about jobs and economics and putting food on the table. I don't see that as a partisan issue. I know, family members of mine and friends who worry about the same things that, and they're all from different political spectrums, So I don't really approach it that way. We think about everyone as a voting citizen, as having the right to vote. And that's how we form our programs.
Okay, yeah, and I think it's Iveth and I, our organizations had an opportunity to do some direct door-to-door canvassing together, right? Mm-hmm. And when we do that, we have no idea the affiliation on the other side of the door. It's just not even part of what we do. And I think what's really important here is voters care about a lot of different things. And when you engage them in a conversation that doesn't involve a vote for this or vote for that candidate, you learn a lot about, how diverse our state is around different kinds of issues. Affordability is always up there. Property taxes in New Jersey. I don't recall, I've been doing this 15 years. You said 20. I don't recall a time in a state legislative race that hasn't been an important issue about property taxes, right? The league does this thing called Vote 411, where we ask some really kind of general questions to candidates. And the questions, are things like, tell us what you think the biggest issue is and what you're going to do to fix it, right? We let candidates speak for themselves on that. What are your top priorities? What are you going to do to make New Jersey more affordable? Because we know economic issues for all of us, like Iveth said, regardless of the letter after your name. It matters if you can't pay your bills. It matters if you don't have a job. It matters if you can't afford a home. So I don't see that as a partisan issue, the way that we're engaging voters on it.
Okay, fair enough. Folks, it's 8:13 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live, it's a special primetime edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe here via Jersey First TV. And my guests tonight are the distinguished president of the Latinas Unite for Political Empowerment Fund, Iveth Mosquera, and the executive director of the League of Women Voters here in New Jersey, Jessie Burns, joining us here on Real Talk. Ladies, fair point. But you mentioned going door to door. I think that's always important, whether it's for organizations like yours or candidates. Like at the end of the day, I mean, you have to knock on doors, get a pulse of what people are feeling right now. And again, I'm not sure if you have any sort of tangible data to share with the audience tonight, but what from door to doors you've been doing thus far? I mean, the weather's getting a little bit better. It's a little easier to go door to door now in April than it was in January and February, I'm sure. But any preliminary data telling you at least what are the most important issues during the election cycle? Again, here in New Jersey, again, I don't want to be presumptive, but I would argue or theorize, again, this is the academic in me, that, again, affordability, property taxes, I think that an issue, and maybe, I'm not sure if this you've been approached with this when you've gone door to door, but a story that really went underreported last election cycle in New Jersey. And what a surprise. We all know how the liberal media is in New Jersey. You know, school board races were important. Like there were hundreds of school board races all throughout the state that I think merited attention and didn't get it. And I think that parents, for the first time in a while, got very engaged in their school board races for things that are going on in our school districts with curriculum and things of that nature. Did you find, aside from what I just mentioned already, were those sort of the most pressing issues you've seen thus far with any preliminary data? Jesse, I'll start with you first, Jesse.
Yeah, so I don't think that we're not collecting data or doing polling because for us, that's not the driving force. We look at why is this voter not turning out, right? They might have turned out in a midterm and then they skip some elections and we wonder, you know, that's the data we use. When you're talking about issue and polling data, that's usually driving campaign, right?
Okay.
And we're not trying to drive campaign talking points or those kind of things. So that kind of data isn't useful for us. I will say, you're right, local elections, school board elections are important, but there's still far too many folks who have no idea they're happening, right? You know, there's some school board elections coming up this month. My town has a nonpartisan municipal election next month, right? Like there are elections happening all the time that people don't know about. And that's what we're focusing on. Folks do care about their school board and what's being taught in their schools. They do care about what their town is spending money on or what their county is spending money on. But getting the first step is ensuring that people know these decisions are being made at these levels that impact them, and then know how to participate and when to participate, right? So I think that you could even see in the school board races that aren't tied to a general election ticket, turnout slow. Nonpartisan municipal races, turnout slow. So engaging folks, that's really the data we use, and not so much about the other side of that, the kind of the traditional GOTV you see in campaigns. We don't do that.
All right. Iveth?
Yeah, same. We don't really collect that data. You know, we just want to make sure that our Latino community gets all of the information in their own language, right? So a couple of things that we did last year, we'll do them soon too, is have webinars where I'll translate, you know, live, and, you know, Jesse will explain early voting and the deadlines and all of that. You know, we just want to make sure that people are informed and that they know that their vote matters, because far too many times we hear people say, well, my vote doesn't count, you know, my vote doesn't matter. And that's not true. And we want people to know that. So yeah, it's pretty much the same. That's why we partner, you know, in so many ways. We LUPE, we don't go out and do the canvassing because you know, the league is already doing it. So we'll partner with them, you know.
Now, when it comes to the organizations, and I think that we talked about it off the air real quick, and I really want to pick both of your brains about it, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're doing nonpartisan work for these organizations. But oftentimes, you know, it's almost like when people look at my media brand, like they're going to say, well, we know Fernando the human being, we know Fernando the person, but Fernando the persona on TV and Fernando the podcast host or the journalist, the opinion journalist, are two very different people. And I think it's easy to conflate that by simply doing a Google search. I mean, people can just do a simple search on my social media. They know that I'm unapologetically conservative, more fiscal conservative, some social issues. It depends what day you catch me on. But when it comes for you both, I mean, again, you're the president of LUPE Fund. Jesse, you're the executive director of the League of Women Voters. Again, while it's not partisan work, I mean, again, I'm not trying to put you ladies on the spot, but a simple Google search is going to tell me, ideologically, you're not rowing in the same boat as Fernando Uribe. Let's just say that. do you find yourself sometimes making it difficult to separate the two if you're approached with that at a webinar or a meet and greet or a town hall of some kind? Because again, you ladies have your politics. You have your policy prescriptions that you believe in. And I think it's fair to say that the three of us are not on the same page whatsoever. And that's cool. That's fine. But my point is, do you find it sometimes difficult to separate that? Because when you're doing nonprofit, nonpartisan work, but at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say that there's a perception that the League and that LUPE lean left as opposed to nonpartisan, but they lean left because of the positions you take. Is that fair to say, Iveth?
I'm not sure, because people have so many different perspectives now on what it means to be nonpartisan. So really the question is, what does nonpartisanship mean to you, right? To us, it means everyone has equal access to voting. Everyone should have equal access to resources. Everyone should have equal access to education, no matter what. Like I said before, we don't ask if you're Republican, Independent, Democrat. We never ask that. So even though some people might think, what you're saying, others don't. So we don't really focus on that. And, it doesn't really bother us or even come into play when we do our thing, because we open our doors to everyone. We really do.
Fair enough. Jesse?
Yeah, I actually kind of love this conversation. The League is 100 years old. Yeah. And I'll tell you, we started as a political organization. We are a political organization. The League has a C4 branch. We do a lot of policy work, right? And we've done that since day one. So some of the things that the early League members did were things like fighting against child labor, stopping child labor, things like that. And we've never changed. It's others' perception of who owns that policy that has changed. And it's funny because I come on something like this and you all might say that the League is, left leaning. If you ask some other folks in Trenton, they'll say that we're too center, we're too right. Last week, we just had a huge battle for the last couple of months on the ELEC bill that the League opposed. That's testimony in the media.
It's so egregious.
We base our actions squarely in policy. And again, I don't care what side is fighting for it. I don't care what the letter is. We do it based on the policy that we've studied and what we're seeing. So campaign finance reform is a great kind of thing. If you've been following the League leading that battle to try to kill that bill, which unfortunately we lost, but it wasn't like we were aligned with some of the folks that you might think we were aligned with, right? During the redistricting battle. We've been working on redistricting for the past decade very strongly in the state. We're not aligned. Whoever holds the most political power in the state is not going to be the one who's really thinking the League is on their side, because we were looking to have an independent commission, having voters' voices in that.
Folks, just bear with us here. We're having some technical difficulties.
Am I cutting out?
No, you're fine. I think you're fine.
Yeah, I can hear you, Iveth.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give Fernando a second.
Mm-hmm. I think he lost the signal. No.
Ladies, I'm sorry about that. I truly hate Verizon Fios. I can't say what I want to say on the air. It's a family show. But Jesse, continue. I know. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's fine. I was just saying that we don't always, I think that there's a misconception about the league and what policies we support and how we get to those policies. And we keep that work very separate from our voter engagement work. We're not having conversations at voter registration tables around policies that we support or don't support. We're allowing voters to kind of have information about how to get things that care for them. So I do love this because it's something we do get a lot more than LUPE gets. The league gets accused of partisanship, and I think it's unfair.
Again, folks, if you're just joining us right now, my apologies here. Some you can bear with us here. Ladies, are you still with me here?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Again, my apologies. Folks, if you're just joining right now, again, we apologize for the technical difficulties here. Real Talk is still live here on a special primetime edition with the president of the Latinas United for Political Empowerment Fund, Iveth Mosquera, and the executive director of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, Jesse Burns, join us here. Jesse, I missed that last part of your answer. Do you just mind repeating it? I appreciate it, because I know you were mentioning that you didn't like sort of being sort of conjoined with some forces in Trenton, where, quite frankly, I think you were trying to fight what I agree with you, and a grossly irresponsible and unfair bill when it came to ELEC law, and it seemed like you were getting a bad rap, right?
No, I think people knew that we were opposed to that bill. I think that the misconception comes from folks kind of looking at other policies where we might be, with different folks, like voting rights policies, perhaps, and assuming that that means that we're partisan. But partisan means that we're working for a political party's purpose, and we're not. We're voicing what we are seeing as the concerns of voters. They care about money in politics, things like that. So we're not aligned with either party or any party. And we're also not afraid to kind of speak out when we see bad policy, regardless of, who's pushing that policy or not.
Fair enough. Ladies, let me go back to you, Iveth, for a second, because again, obviously voter engagement, specifically as it pertains to Latinas and the Latino community, what are the most pressing issues? Let me ask you this, because I've been as vocal a critic of the governor as anybody. And it's funny because the Latino community, specifically Latino-owned businesses, small businesses were ravaged during COVID. We all know what the emperor did in terms of managing COVID. I've gone on record saying he didn't do as good of a job as other governors did. Like, in my opinion, like Ron DeSantis in Florida or Greg Abbott in Texas, they clearly both did better jobs. The emperor didn't. And I think that hurt a lot of Latino communities, especially small businesses. What have you heard from, again, voter engagement, talking to Latinos and Latinas collectively, that, again, small business owners, where they were affected? Again, the legislature pretty much enabled this governor to keep the state as shut down as long as it was, wrongly. We're all going to know that. The data is going to tell us that soon. What's been the feedback that you've gotten through LUPE about, these issues that are affecting Latinos, whether it's small business owners, whether it's the, learning issues that kids, getting back to school now, we're 3 years out of COVID per se. Are you hearing those things?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was really bad, for a lot of people, but especially for Latinos. A lot of Latinos suffered, loss of life, loss of, their businesses more than any other population, unfortunately. And so, what we're hearing is that we are a resilient people and that we, will move ahead. And yes, it was difficult. But that's why, LUPE exists, because we want to provide those resources, right? We want to go out into the community. We don't only talk about, just voter engagement, civic engagement. We provide scholarships, educational scholarships to students, because a lot of students are, struggling to pay their tuition. We offer mentorship. We offer, all other types of, a lot of other resources. And so, we respond to what our community is telling us. And, we like to be out there, and do everything, but we can't do everything, right? So we are focusing this year, especially on mentoring, young people, giving out educational scholarships. We do our, nonpartisan program, Elección Latina, in the fall. And it's just, a group of, elected officials and not elected officials, people who work on campaigns, who just encourage women, Latinas, to run for office. No matter, we don't talk about parties. We don't care what party you're with. We just want to see more representation. So that's a big focus of ours this year. But that's what we're hearing. We really want more representation, equal representation across the board.
Jesse, same question for you. I mean, again, we're looking at, during this election cycle, obviously, I mean, I think there are going to be issues that probably are more pressing than others. Again, whether it's women business owners, teachers, other professionals that obviously I think were impacted during COVID with this governor and policies that, I mean, again, I'm sure we could all dissect it to death. But do you find these issues obviously most pressing for, potential voters that you talk to as well with the league?
So during COVID, and we did a lot of work with LUPE. During COVID, there was a lot of election changes. So that was our focus,
Sure.
Trying to make sure that people had that information as it was happening. And I think too, I want to talk a second about what Iveth was talking about. Iveth, didn't we partner with the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce on trying to do the gubernatorial debate? Yeah. So we
were going to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think excuse me one second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So we look at these issues where, look at people who might not be completely aligned, like the chambers, when you're talking about small businesses, and we say, what can we do to partner together to make this part of the conversation, right? So that when we hold the candidate forum, when we hold the debate, those views are being represented and the partners that we're choosing to ensure that, because for some folks, you're right, like small businesses, I know, people who own restaurants, people who own things that closed down, that was a huge financial hit that they have not recovered from. And having conversations about those things are important. We're not trying to necessarily direct those conversations all the time or put in our policy recommendations all the time on every conversation. As Iveth said, we pick our policy issues, but we do recognize when something should at least be on the stage. And I think that's why, we were eager and still eager to continue partnerships with chambers of commerce around questions about affordability and these financial things that you're bringing up.
Sure. Iveth, let me get back to you for a second, because I know that I think we talked off the air. I also talked to a few other people off the air as well that, they were a little miffed at me late last year because I mentioned LUPE on one of my broadcasts as it pertained to maybe not, I'm not saying you, I'm not saying the organization is responsible for this, but the perception that maybe during this election cycle, some female legislators were being kind of pushed out. And especially in an area like New Jersey, where there are pockets that are kind of red, but by and large, it's a pretty blue state. It's not purple. It's not purple like my jacket whatsoever. I think that's a misconception. It's a pretty blue state. And by that, it means that it's pretty much the Democrat Party has a pretty good stranglehold on county apparatuses. When I mean by that, like the political parties, the political, mobilization. And it seems that, I think that for some Latinas, let's be fair, I was the only one talking about it a lot late last year, again, as a journalist, where some Latina legislators, very respected Latina legislators, were being pushed out. Case in point, I got in trouble with the mayor of Hoboken. And Ravi Bal and I don't like each other, but I took him to task on the fact that, for example, Assemblywoman Annette Chaparro, who is an amazing Assemblywoman, I know Annette personally, so it's not like I'm trying to get points by dropping her name. No, we're friends. Some things I disagree with her on policy-wise. I haven't liked some things she's voted on, but we're friends, and I'll talk to her. And I was livid for months now. I've been the only one talking about it where, hey, here's the mayor of Hoboken having a say in who to put in an assembly seat now after redistricting. And here we are, a guy who's a supposed, Democrat, progressive. Here he is pushing out a Latina for a white guy. Not that he gets white people, but, if you're such a staunch progressive and Democrat, what are you doing in the heart of Democratville in Hudson County? Get rid of a Latina to get in your law partner in the law firm you work for, and he's a white man. I thought that was egregious. I was the only one talking about it. I know it got me into a little bit of trouble because I seem to maybe not implicate Lupe by saying, hey, where's Lupe? Why isn't Lupe? Why am I speaking up? Lupe should be speaking up. And I know that didn't sit well with some people. I want to give you a chance to respond. And if it didn't sit well with some people, I apologize. That was not my intent. But my intent was to stand up for Latinas because I'm Latino.
Yeah, I think when you did that, you weren't thinking actually about Lupe. I think you were thinking about another organization because we're 501c3 and we don't really get involved in the politics. But at the end of the day, I mean, we do want to see equal representation. We want to see more Latinas in elected office, no matter what. We want them to be represented at all levels. So it wasn't really us who came out and, and said anything about that. We don't really have a position. We're a C3 organization. But like I said, we'll do everything in our power to make sure we elect more Latinas and, have more Latinas in leadership positions, really, not just elected office, because now we're focusing also in the C-suite and all of that thing. But I think it was only, we weren't like upset with you. I think you just made a mistake and mentioned us when it wasn't us that we're talking about that.
I think I might have mentioned Lupe PAC, right? Which I know, again, is different. It's
probably. There's that's a different organization.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And Jesse, let me ask you this, though, again, as nonpartisan organization too, as ladies, you're very engaged in the political process. Again, getting back to New Jersey. New Jersey's a pretty blue state. There's pockets that are red down the shore, Northwest Jersey, maybe Southwest Jersey. It's pretty blue. It's one party's got a stranglehold on it. You're seeing it during these legislative races. A lot of guys running. And not maybe, again, I was happy in 2021, we sent 8 new Republican Assemblywomen to Trenton. So I was ecstatic. Still doesn't seem to be enough female representation in the legislature as women engage in the political process. You're Caucasian, you're Latina, ladies. How much of a concern is it right now that you're just not seeing maybe enough women candidates, especially in a party that, let's be honest, it's the party that, for women, well, doesn't really seem to be pushing women in New Jersey.
Yeah, so I think that you kind of hit on it a little bit when you were talking about who picked who to replace who, right? So who are the people doing the picking? Who is in power? And often you're talking about probably white political bosses, county bosses, or people with a lot of male white political bosses with a lot of power picking about who's going to replace who, right? And that really undercuts voters. You also mentioned earlier about not having competitive races, because by the time we get to the general election, sometimes folks have already been handpicked, maybe even years before. Maybe during redistricting, they might have been handpicked. So, the league does do this kind of stuff. We're trying to stop the line, for example. We think that the ballot line.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually going to be my next question, what your thoughts were on the line. So please continue. I'm really curious.
Yeah. So, we're part of the lawsuit. We're not one of the plaintiffs or anything. We're amicus on the lawsuit that's trying to stop the party line in New Jersey because it has just way too much sway over the outcome of elections. And we think it undercuts the voice of voters. So I think, sometimes sometimes it goes that maybe more people of color, maybe more women are being picked, but sometimes it doesn't, right? And when we are doing the redistricting maps in a large coalition of folks, we did racial equity maps. And racial equity maps had to do with putting communities of interest together. And it wasn't just racial equity communities. There's a lot of ways that communities of interest are defined. But ultimately, it means that folks have the ability to vote for somebody that they think best represents them. That doesn't necessarily mean Latinos elect Latinos, women elect women. That's not how that works, but it means that a community gets a political voice in a way that gives them more power that might be able to counteract some of these things you're talking about. Hand selecting who's going to replace who in the legislature, kind of drawing your own districts and doing kind of a trade of, well, we'll give you this town if you give us this town, and so is going to run for Senate. All of that does not take into account the voters at all. So when you ask, why is voter turnout 27%? Why is voter turnout 34%? I think that the finger pointing is pretty clear that it's at folks who are trying to pick their own voters, determine the outcome of their own elections, and kind of rig the game before we even have a chance to cast a ballot.
Now, let me ask you this. I mean, you brought up the line, and again, the example I gave, for example, up here in the newly revamped 32nd legislative district, I mean, coincidentally, the mayor of Hoboken, which is one of the seats occupies in the district, is Indian. And it's interesting, again, where up here in 31, 32, 33, there seems to be this sort of unofficial rule that, well, the mayors within those townships that encompass the district are going to have an enormous say in who runs in those assembly seats. I can't speak to where you live, Jesse, and what district you live in, or even what you live in. Is that also sort of the unofficial rule as well, where the mayors kind of have a big say about those assembly seats, or is it more like the county Democratic Party and the county Republican Party?
It's different, I think, depending on the seat of power in the state. So it depends on the district. It depends. So I think you're right. You know, in North Jersey, there's a lot of power in those mayoral seats. There's a lot of power in Union County for mayors and things like this. There's a lot of, it depends on how the power in the county is currently working. So, and it's on both sides. I mean, depending on how their party conventions and committees are working. But if one town has a great amount of power, then they might end up having more say. The committee members, you know, I think that a lot of times the committee members do half represent voters, right? Like, but a lot of those committee member seats are also vacant, or they're just filled because nobody ran for them. So that's also a problem, but it's different throughout the state. I'm in Legislative District 11, which is a really competitive split district. We have our assembly members and a D senator in my district. And the way the power plays out in Monmouth County, I think is probably unique.
I'm sorry to cut you. I'll let you finish. Is LD 11? Is that Vin Gopal and the Republican? Okay, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yeah. So I think it's unique depending on kind of the county, what the political structure looks like in that county, and it differs. It differs throughout the state, and also if the legislative district goes across counties, if the congressional district has a play in it, there's a lot of different factors. But the important thing is that the voters aren't enough of a factor.
Fair enough. Folks, it's 8:40 and we're about to wrap up shortly. These lovely ladies here have been so patient and so gracious with their time tonight. It's 8:41 here on the East Coast, here on Jersey First TV. We're about to wrap up shortly with the president of the Latinas United for Political Empowerment Fund, Iveth Mosquera, and the executive director of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, Jesse Burns. Ladies, I don't know if it's possible, but let me just take off your presidential hat and your executive director hat for a second. I'm talking to Iveth and Jesse. I don't know if it's possible. Let's see if we can do that. This election cycle, I mean, I'll talk as Fernando Uribe, the homeowner, taxpayer, concerned citizen. You know, for me, this election cycle, I care about legislators in Trenton that maybe are going to be more reasonable economically, not the far left that spend, and love to tax, that inflate the budget. You know, I'm going to be kind of careful with my wording here because it might bother Iveth, but, you know, there's a sector of the legislature, and there are some nonprofits that tend to coddle undocumented residents in New Jersey. I call them something else, but not to offend, you know, I usually say illegals, but I'll be nice today. There are some forces in Trenton that maybe are acquiescing to too much to woke things, to LGBT causes, whatever. You know, for me, again, I say very simply, to me, it's not about pronouns. It's about property tax. It's about pocketbook, kitchen table issues to me. That's what matters. That's why people are fleeing New Jersey in record numbers to Florida, states that are governed better, like Florida, like Georgia, like Texas, to the Carolinas, because it's expensive. That's what matters to me. I'm talking to Iveth and Jesse here. Are the issues I care about on your radar, or are we at just different spectrums?
So I think when you say something like it's not about pronouns, it's about property taxes, it does an injustice. It could be about both. And it is about both, right? I think that when you have people suffering because they just want to be identified as how they, you know, identify, what's wrong with that? And that same person might also want to be able to afford a home, What's wrong with that? So I don't look at these things. Well, one, I am part of the LGBTQ community, so that does matter to me. I have a child, I have a 4-year-old who does use they pronouns, not for, she doesn't identify as they, she knows they pronouns for others, right? So I think that respecting people is important. And it doesn't mean that you also don't want to be able to afford things or have a home or a job. What matters to me, personally, if I just said, these are the things that are top of my life right now, and that's not how I vote. I think about others as well. But I would say childcare, preschool. She's in preschool.
Fair.
Rolling the dice on lottery and not knowing whether we're going to be able to afford to put her into a preschool. That's important to me. It might not be important to somebody without children. But I don't look at only what's important to me in my life. When I think about the decisions that are made in Trenton, I look about how do we care for everybody? How do we build a better society for everybody? And that includes folks who might identify as non-binary, people who might be discriminated against because they're gay. So I do care about those things equally.
Fair enough. Jesse, real quick, I'll let Iveth respond to. Jesse, maybe it's the academic in me, but I'm not saying it for semantics. I'm not saying it to be a smartass, but like as the academic in me, like the reason I struggle with pronoun conversations and everything else, it's like, again, I'm not trying to be a smartass, but like this is linguistics. Like they, them, like that means plural. Like it's not multiple people. Like it's, I'm not trying to be a smartass to anybody watching, but like I'm very much about linguistics and I'm very much about sort of like, let's shave the apple to its core. Like when I hear the words they, them, I think of plural because that's linguistics. That's subject, plural, predicates, sometimes I think I'm a conservative and I try to be reasonable, but sometimes when I hear stuff like this, like it's easy to turn off a middle of the road undecided voter when like, again, are we manipulating linguistics now? Like I hope you get what I'm saying.
So my degree's in English. My master's is in fine arts. I'm a poet by trade. And I can tell you 100% the academic in me knows that language changes. So linguistics evolves. And I've seen that through the entire history of language. I think that it's not just about linguistics. I think it's about if somebody says to you that they identify a certain way and they would like you to use a certain pronoun, that you should respect that and not say it's about linguistics. I don't value that. And, I think that people care about this because when you send that kid home and they feel like nobody respects them enough just to use the pronoun they're asking or the name they're asking, that's a kid you are sending into something that's just miserable, where they're going to feel like nothing in their life matters. And I wouldn't care for that person. And I know a lot of people like this, right? And I know how hard that is. So it's not about linguistics. I think the opposite. It's about what is the harm for me to use the pronoun that they've asked me to use.
Okay, fair enough. Iveth, again,
not
Iveth the president. Iveth, like again, the selection cycle.
Personally,
to Latinos. Again, I hate to. Again, I'm not trying to be combative, but Latinx, it drives me crazy. I don't need someone dictating to me, how we should identify. It's, Latinos, Latinas. It kind of boggles my mind. It kind of infuriates me again as someone that, woke people trying to dictate to me culturally how to identify. It doesn't sit well with me. And I'm curious as a Latina, whether or not you've ever run into that conflict among board members, among discussions during the selection season. Again, issues that, perfect example. It drives me up the wall that in the state budget, there is money allocated, right? Our tax dollars to pay for a legal fund, to provide legal representation for undocumented people to get legal representation to fight deportation. That's madness to me. Like, really? Like, those are things that as a fiscal conservative, like, and again, as a Hispanic and Latino, I'm like, it doesn't make my parents, for example, my parents are livid. They're not racist. They're not xenophobes. They're immigrants. But they look at that policy and we say, wait a minute, what's going on in Trenton? Why are we coddling undocumented people the way we are? Doesn't make my parents racist or bigoted, Iveth, but I think that's sort of the generational divide we're hitting, right?
So for me personally, I'm also the daughter of immigrants who crossed through Mexico illegally. And when I was born, they became legal in the 70s. And so, I, same as Jesse, I just respect everyone. Everyone deserves, everyone's human, everyone bleeds red. Everyone deserves dignity. They deserve good education. They deserve food on the table. If they're working, my parents worked so hard. They didn't have documentation until I was born, but they busted their behinds and they paid their taxes. And why shouldn't they also have the so-called American dream of having a home and owning a home, and retiring and going on vacation? They work for that. And so for me, it's all about respect for your fellow human. And if they want to be called they, who's that hurting? No, but that's not hurting anybody. If they want to be called Latinx, that's not hurting anybody. To me, unless you are, God forbid, doing harm to my children, it's not you're not hurting anyone. You're not taking money away. You're not taking food away from anyone when you respect each other. And that's for us, that's why we do the work that we do. Me personally, that's why I do the work that I do, because I've seen the struggle of immigrants, right? And what they did for me, I want to give back, because when I was growing up, 70s and 80s, there were no resources for Latinas. There were no organizations of Latinas. So when Gloria Soto, the wonderful Gloria Soto, introduced me to LUPE, I was like, wow, there's actually a Latina organization of women who look like me. And then when I found out that it was, the goal was to get equal representation, to elected office, but then we expanded to other areas. Personally, those are the issues that matter to me, is equal representation for women, for Latinas, because we are way behind. We're way behind in pay. We're way behind in healthcare. We're way behind, in the economy, and we need to catch up and give people the respect and the dignity that they deserve, because we're all humans at the end of the day. We're all people.
Fair enough. Before we call it a night here, ladies, real quick, again, folks, if you're interested in getting involved with the LUPE Fund, please go to their website, www.lupenj.org. Don't forget to like them on Facebook, of course, follow them on Twitter as well. And also with the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, check out their website, www.lwvnj.org. Make sure also you follow them on Twitter. And also, I'm not sure if on Instagram, but I know on Facebook and Twitter, obviously, I know it's much more evident there. Ladies, it's been a great conversation. I think that clearly, three very different ideological individuals here. I think the three very educated individuals having a dialogue, which I think is important in this sort of climate of like tribalism on steroids, basically, politically speaking, and not just in New Jersey, but nationally. I think it's refreshing to have a conversation where we can agree to disagree. We can sort of articulate an itemized policy, because I'm a policy nerd at heart, again, with my graduate degrees as well. It's a pleasure to have you on. I think, obviously, we're going to let the audience decide where they stand, obviously. I do hope that you share tonight's episode. I think it was a very meaningful and productive dialogue. Ladies, I'll give you the last word here tonight. Jesse, I'll start with you.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having us on. Thank you for bringing up these topics. I appreciate any opportunity to talk about the League's policies and how we maintain our nonpartisanship, particularly in these hyperpartisan times. So thank you.
Okay. And again, Jesse, I'm not that bad as a conservative. I'm okay. I don't bite. I don't, I don't have cooties or anything. So
if I thought that, I wouldn't be here. Right. So we're here.
And I appreciate that. And again, I'm not that bad a conservative. I think I get a bad rap, but it depends who you ask. Iveth, I'll give you the last word as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. It just shows how three different people can come together and just have a really good, meaningful conversation. And I appreciate that you gave us that platform, and that, people will understand more what we're all about, what the League is all about, and we'll continue having the conversations.
Okay, fair enough. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, she is Jessie Burns, the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, and she is also the President of the Latinas United for Political Empowerment Fund here in New Jersey. Iveth Mosquera, my guest here tonight. Ladies, again, I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day coming up. Certainly keep up the good work. Again, we'll agree or disagree on some things, but the important thing is to have a dialogue, to itemize, and to help our audience understand, because we do want voters engaged. Like that number you mentioned about 27%, that's unacceptable. I think that is awful. People got to get engaged. These are elections that matter, not just, again, to the point of legislative races, but local elections. You have county commissioners, county executives, you have city council races, for example, where I live up here in Hudson County. Like these local elections matter. I tell my students all the time as an academic, all politics is local, okay? We can bitch and moan about what's going on nationally, but locally it's important to sort of have a good perspective about what's going on. And again, kudos to both of you ladies, what you're doing with the organizations. I may not agree on some of the policy positions you take, but one thing I cannot deny is your commitment and how hard you work to get people engaged, because if there's anything that turns people off, let's be honest, it's politics. And the way that you ladies find a way to keep people engaged, go door to door, get people thinking and wondering, that's not a bad thing, okay? I mean, again, I think I'll say it for the record. I think both organizations sometimes get a bad rap about where you stand ideologically. That's not really, again, I think you did a really great job, both of you tonight, in articulating, quite frankly, like the meat and bones, as they say, of what the organizations are. So keep up the good work, keep fighting the good fight, obviously keep getting people engaged and be more politically astute. So folks, again, she is the executive director of the League of Women Voters, Jesse Burns, and she is Iveth Mosquera, the president of LUPE Fund here in New Jersey, the Latinas Unite for Political Empowerment. My guest tonight here on Real Talk. Ladies, happy Mother's Day. And again, tell everyone you know how much you love Real Talk, because I'm not that bad after all. All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night. God bless you both. And we'll talk to you soon later this summer on Real Talk on Jersey First TV. Take care, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Folks, certainly a great episode here tonight. Obviously, I think that we got two very, very good perspectives, obviously, about what's going on in this political climate. And folks, again, listen, that number is alarming, as I said before. It's 27% of voter turnout, especially in an election cycle like this. That's unacceptable, folks. It just is. And I think that, whether you agree or disagree with sort of the political stances that maybe these organizations take, which they don't, because they're nonpartisan, right? But it's easy to sort of conflate it and just say, well, they take this stand and they believe in this and they believe in that. Well, again, folks, I mean, you have to make that decision for yourself. But two outstanding ladies, certainly great conversations tonight, and certainly I appreciate them being on here this evening. Folks, before I call it a night here, some final thoughts and certainly some things I noticed during this past weekend, during, again, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Weekend, obviously Easter Sunday. And of course, an article that stood out for me, a column that stood out for me that didn't really sit well with me was courtesy of Insider NJ. And let me just say this, because everyone knows sort of the heat I have with Insider NJ and the mutual dislike that exists between its editor-in-chief, Max Pizarro, certainly the Graham family, specifically Mike and Ryan Graham, and their general manager, Pete O'Neill. I certainly don't think highly of them, and they don't think highly of me, and that's okay. But I think what bothers me, especially during this past Holy Weekend, right, as we celebrate, the Lord has risen on Sunday during Easter, obviously his crucifixion on Friday, during Good Friday, and certainly, looking into Holy Thursday, I would think that, maybe, I don't know, Insider NJ will have a little more awareness than not to publish an article from the resident virtue signaler. And we all know who I'm talking about, folks. Again, a guy that I just cannot roast enough on this show, and that's Jay Lassiter. And we all know, obviously, I think you can see on social media the mutual disdain that exists between Jay and I. Obviously, I don't like him, and he doesn't like me, and that's okay. But what bothers me, though, folks, is, seeing a column on Good Friday of all days during Holy Weekend, right? As we, sort of get into the, quite frankly, really, I guess, Jay looking to, I think for lack of a better word, trying to get, I guess, awareness about, the support that transgender residents get in New Jersey. And I think that, listen, folks, I think you all know where I stand on certain LGBT issues. While I support LGBT individuals, I can oftentimes not agree with some of their policy positions or what they're looking to do. And here in New Jersey, obviously, I mean, reading Jay's column over the weekend, obviously, It's disingenuous, I think, from the get-go. And we talk about, for example, at a time when Republicans are politicizing the very existence of transgender people. No, Jay, that's just not true. You want to believe that because, again, you love to vilify Republicans, and that's fine. You don't like conservatives, all right? People that, for the most part, probably have better fiscal policy prescriptions than you do, okay? But he goes on to write, New Jersey is taking the opposite approach. New Jersey now protects those seeking gender-affirming healthcare, such as high-quality hormone therapy. So New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy this week signed an executive order protecting trans folk and their families from several forms of discrimination. And unlike the times when Murphy's support for LGBT feels performative, this executive order is a big deal. He goes on to write, for example, Trenton Councilwoman Jennifer Williams is New Jersey's first transgender municipal lawmaker, and inspired by Minnesota's affirming embrace of trans persons in the face of red state hostility. Folks, really, Minnesota? That's the least red state probably in the country. But again, Jay likes to get his facts wrong. Ms. Williams sought to recreate Minnesota's hospitality here in New Jersey, and so she shopped the idea around. Well, it's not hard to do here in New Jersey, whether it's the governor or sort of the stranglehold that Garden State Equality has in Trenton on certain legislators. It's not going to be hard to shop that around, right? So, of course, he goes on to write, according to Ms. Williams, both Alabama and Idaho made it a felony crime to provide medical care to trans children. I think that, folks, if you do your homework and you read the essence of the bills in Idaho and Alabama, I think that's not the case. But again, Jay would rather vilify people than give you facts, okay? So, for example, she writes, Jay writes about Ms. Williams, quote, I'm quite proud that my home state will provide a new home for our fellow Americans needing to flee from where they live just so they can be healthy, happy, and live authentically. For example, Louise Walpin, a living legend, was part of the first gay marriage in New Jersey history along with her wife, Marisha Shapiro. She's also a clinician with decades of experience on her side. Now, Jay goes on to write, of course, that Ms. Williams and Ms. Walpin helped to spearhead the effort to which would lead to this week's executive order after watching similarly intended legislation languish in New Jersey's Democratic-dominated General Assembly. That stalled bill, sponsored by New Jersey State Senator Andrew Zwicker, is the latest in a long series of social issues that Trenton Democrats are slow to embrace, such as gay marriage and weed. That's not true, Jay. Now, again, when it comes to same-sex marriage, I think that the law of the land was decided in 2015 by the U.S. Supreme Court, and subsequently New Jersey has followed along, as well as marijuana. Now, again, I think Jay would just want you to be able to smoke weed on every street corner in the state, and that's just not the case, nor is it healthy. Nor do I think I like the optics of it either, right? So on one hand, you've got the GOP still using the lives of LGBT folks to score political points. No, Jay, that's just not true. What conservatives and Republicans, I think, are doing is the idea that, again, Jay won't talk about Riley Gaines, the NCAA swimmer who was violently attacked this weekend in San Francisco at San Francisco State University while she has simply appeared at a rally, okay? But Republicans or conservatives are not using the LGBTQ folks to score political points. What I'm saying is the idea that, folks, biology is biology, okay? And this notion that, again, whether it's Jay Lassiter, the rest of the Lollipop Guild that sort of enable him on his social media, we all know who they are. I don't have to name them per se. We all know who they are. I've named them before, okay? But the idea that, hey, if we don't want to acquiesce to something that just biologically isn't true, then that doesn't make us bigots. It doesn't make us transphobes. It doesn't make us intolerant. Jay, here's the reality. I think for a lot of people out there in New Jersey, I think you have to sort of wrap your head around this. Trans women are not women. They're just not. They can pretend to be, but the idea that we're having rallies or having activists harass someone like Riley Gaines as she's walking through the corridors of the campus of San Francisco State, okay? Or, I don't know, other individuals like myself that have been vilified at events for taking these positions. Like, Jay, just because you say something, see, Jay last year reminds me of the sort of the Cardi B music listener. Just because you scream at the loudest doesn't make you right. And unfortunately, when you look at this column, again, Jay, nobody, okay, that I can think of that's a meaningful conservative, that is someone of considerable influence, is looking to marginalize LGBTQ folks for any political points. But the fact is, again, trans women are not women. They can hope all they want, okay? You can take whatever therapy you want. They're not going to get pregnant. They're not going to menstruate. Folks, let me tell you something, okay? If trans women could have periods and all the discomfort that women, that biological women, women with a uterus, women that menstruate, women that can bear offspring, okay? If trans women, let me tell you something, if trans women can menstruate and all the pain and discomfort that real ladies go through, I guarantee you right now, that movement would die right on the spot after 28 days. Because what I know about what women have to endure just through menstruation alone, I don't wish that on anybody. I thank God every day I'm a man that I don't have to deal with that stuff. Okay? So Jay, the idea that you and whatever lobby in New Jersey or whatever activists want to go around screaming at the top of your lungs, trans women are women. No, they're not. They're just not. Okay? And I get it. You know, whenever it is you took a high school biology course, you're in your mid to late 70s, so you probably took one like 60 something years ago. I get it. That information isn't fresh in your recollection. I understand all that. But Jay, just because you and others want to scream it doesn't make it so. Trans women are not women. They're not menstruating. They're not bearing children. They don't have a uterus. You can say whatever you want, but that isn't bigoted. That isn't transphobic. That's me using facts. And I think that columns like this do a big disservice. Now, the devil's in the details. You have to read what is in, again, those specific states and those bills. And again, folks, very much like I talked about the Dobbs decision last summer, if you read the Constitution, you read the Bill of Rights, I've talked about it at length on this show, folks, if you read the 10th Amendment, it says it very clearly. It's up to states' rights. Jay, if you don't like what's going on in Alabama and Idaho, great. Go move there. Believe me, I'd love to drive you to the airport and get your ass out of New Jersey. Trust me, and so many others. But here in New Jersey, there seems to be a tremendous acquiescence to the LGBT community, which is fine, whatever. Live your life. But the idea that you want to sort of change biology, to me, that doesn't work. And it doesn't work to other people in New Jersey. And again, it doesn't make me a transphobe. It doesn't make me a bigot. But the idea, we have to stop sort of saying, well, this is this, folks, when we know biologically and intellectually it's not. Trans women are not women. They're pretending to be women, but they're not women. They're not my mother. They're not my aunt. They're not my best friend. They're not my other best friend that lives in Kentucky. They're not all my other female friends, okay, who have bear children, who have a uterus, who menstruate, okay? That's the problem. And unfortunately, propagandists like Jay Lassiter, who again are enabled by Insider NJ, do us a disservice. And of all weekends, really? You couldn't wait until Monday? I had to read this on my newsfeed during Easter weekend? On Good Friday, when I'm trying to honor the crucifixion of my Lord, right, who died for our sins. I know Jay's an atheist. He doesn't care about that stuff. But for people like me who have faith and have a moral compass and have a code, do I really need to see that? Doesn't Max Prezzaro and Pete O'Neill have a little bit more awareness about not publishing a column like this during Easter weekend? You couldn't wait until Monday, Pete? You couldn't wait until Monday, Max, to publish this nonsense from Jay? You couldn't wait just 2 extra days as if you don't have other things to publish about? Why don't you focus on the ELEC bill and how egregious that is, or other things, or local races? Did I really need to see this during Easter weekend? Really? I mean, Pete, you're a grown-ass man. Max, you're a grown-ass man. Like, it doesn't somewhere click up in your head that maybe residents in New Jersey that read Insider NJ don't have to read about this stuff during Easter weekend? Really? This is what I have to be subjected to? I'm sorry, guys. Have a little more awareness. And as for Jay Lassiter, you need to have a little bit more awareness too, Jay. Again, if other states are doing that, that's on them. It's the 10th Amendment. If you care so much about what's going on in other states, go move there. Believe me, I won't miss you. Go live there, go campaign, go mobilize, go door to door, and change the legislative makeup of that state. But here in New Jersey, you're still bitching and moaning about things that, quite frankly, you and your community still benefit greatly from. I get it. You want to stick up for people? That's all well and good, but be right on your facts. And more times than not, yeah, when it comes to being right on the facts, folks, that's definitely not Jay Lassiter. Again, you can, have whatever temper tantrums you want online. You want to, resort to whatever name calling you want online. But Jay, again, you can't change biology. That's, again, I know you took it 60 years ago. It might be time to pick up that high school biology book and do a little refresher. Because again, you're kind of wrong on the facts as you usually tend to be. But what else is new with Insider NJ and Jay Lassiter, folks, here in the New Jersey, really, media echo chamber? And that's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank the distinguished president of Latinas United for Political Empowerment Fund here in New Jersey, Iveth Mosquera, and the executive director of the League of Women Voters here in New Jersey, Jesse Burns, for a very delightful conversation. Ran a little bit long tonight, folks, but it was a very good conversation and worth catching on. If you just joined us right now, the replay will be available right after we go off the air. Folks, I cannot say enough, quite frankly, about the success. And folks, I have to say it again, because you know what? When it comes to, the great traffic we continue to get here on Jersey First, it's all due to you. So please, sharing is caring. Make sure you check us out on all of our social media platforms. As I say it all the time, make sure that you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Wherever you get your podcasts, of course, make sure you take Jersey First TV with you. Folks, I cannot say it enough. Again, new episodes of Bridging the Gap air every Thursday night on jerseyfirst.org/TV with AJ Malilo and Stephen Rombolo. And new episodes of The Nader Narrative air every Thursday as well, hosted by Elizabeth Nader. Great episodes, folks, great content. The dream team of New Jersey, really of New Jersey journalism here is always with Jersey First TV. And brand new episodes air every Monday Night Live. We'll be back next Monday in our regularly scheduled 6 p.m. start time, ladies and gentlemen, here for Real Talk. And I cannot say enough, folks, that without you, my loyal listening audience, the great traffic that we enjoy would not be possible. So on behalf of Jersey First TV, we thank you and we love you for your ongoing support of our outstanding brand of journalism that we bring you every single week. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 100 Latino via Latino Spirit online magazine for 2020, 2021, and certainly 2022, as well as being the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and of course, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, folks, saying thank you so much for joining us here on this special primetime edition, and I'll see you next Monday on our regularly scheduled 6 p.m. start time here on Jersey First TV. As always, folks, take care of yourselves. Please party responsibly. Hey, I can't say enough since I'm rocking purple tonight. Let's go Lakers as we start the NBA playoffs. Again, folks, nobody wants to play the Lakers in the playoffs. We're hot right now. But again, folks, take care of yourselves. As always, please party responsibly. And we'll see you next week here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Have a great night, everybody.